Focus locked. Hello everyone, welcome to another video. My name is Mario, and in today's video I want to give you an overview of all the Sony cameras available out there under $2,000. There are a bunch of different lines of cameras. So there are the Sony a6000 series cameras with the a6100, 6400, 6600, etc. And there's the newer Sony CV line as well. And there's also the Sony RX100 series. And there's also full frame cameras as well. So in today's video, I'll be talking only about the cameras that I think you should consider getting in 2023. Then I'll be telling you who I think each of these cameras is for. I've also made a similar video more than a year ago that has information on some of Sony's older cameras that you could find in the used market. So if you're interested, you can check this video up here or in the description below. There's also a full video I've made on Sony's entry-level full-frame mirrorless cameras that you can consider. And again, all of those videos will be in the description below, but make sure you watch this first before you get to those, so at least you have a better idea of everything that's available out there. So let's first start with the APS-C interchangeable lens cameras. So these are cameras that do not have a fixed lens, so meaning you can get different lenses. These are also APS-C sensor cameras, and their sensor is slightly smaller than that of a full frame camera. So we have the a6100 that came out in late 2019. This one's about $748 at the time of the making of this video. We have the a6400 that came out in early 2019, and this one's a little bit more expensive, almost about $900. And the a6600, which came out late 2019, and this one is the most expensive of all of these three, at $1,398. So let me talk about some of the similarities across all of these three cameras, as well as some of the key differences. So they're all 24.2 megapixel sensors. They have the same sensor as well as the same Bion's X image processor from Sony. In terms of video specs, they all shoot 4K up to 30 frames per second and in 1080p up to 120 frames per second. They'll have the same color space at 8-bit 420. And the 4K that you get out of these cameras is actually pretty good because it's oversampled from the entire sensor, meaning that you get 4K footage captured from a 6K sample area. All of these have manual focus peaking. They also have a 3.5mm mic input, and that allows you to attach an external mic to these cameras. There is no recording limit on all of these cameras, which is a plus. You get Sony's real-time eye autofocus and subject tracking focus, and this is all done via Sony's hybrid autofocus with 425 face detection points. That is just overcomplicated wording to say that you get really good autofocus out of all of these three cameras. You also get a touchscreen flippy screen that allows you to flip it all the way up if you like vlogging and seeing yourself. You do not get a fully articulating screen though, so that is one thing to keep in mind on all of these three cameras. So now that we've gone through all of these similarities across all of these three cameras, there are some key differences, and this is what determines the price difference among all these three cameras. The Sony a6100 and 6400 do not have a headphone jack, so you cannot plug in your headphones to monitor your audio in real time, whereas the a6600 allows you to do that. The a6100 seems to be a little bit more on the photocentric side, as it does not have flat picture profiles for video shooting, so you do not get HLG picture profiles or S-Log picture profiles. And without these picture profiles, you don't have that much flexibility to manipulate the color on the video coming out of this camera if you're planning to do some color grading. The a6400 and the a6600 do have flat picture profiles like HLG and Sony S-Log. Another two differences between the a6600 and the a61 and a6400 is that the a6600 has in-body image stabilization, and that's going to allow you to have steadier footage if you want to do handheld video. The a6600 also uses the newer Sony batteries, the MPFZ 100 batteries, which give you about double the juice as opposed to the older ones, the MPFW50s, which is the battery that the a61 and a6400 camera uses. Now that we have all of these three out of the way, which one is the a6100 for? So the a6100 is for those who really want to focus on just photography and occasionally video shooting or occasional vlogging. The a6400 is for those who are a bit more serious about video as well, if you want to shoot in flat picture profiles and have the ability to color grade your footage. And if you want to spend a little bit more money, you can get the a6600, which gives you everything else and a new battery as well as in-body image stabilization. In my opinion though, the a6600 at the current price of today, it's a little bit on the pricey side compared to other cameras that have similar features from other manufacturers. So that's something to keep in mind. So if you are getting value out of this video, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, if you're enjoying this video so far. So let's move on to the next one. The next one is the Sony CVE10 that came out in mid-2021, and the current price is about $698 US. This one also has the same 24.2 megapixel sensor and processor as the previous cameras. You also get 4K up to 30 frames per second, and in 1080p you can shoot up to 120 frames per second. You also get the same 8-bit 420 color and flat picture profiles such as HLG and S-Log. There is no recording limit on this camera, similar to the other ones, but something that's new as opposed to the previous three is that now you get a directional 3-capsule microphone with a windscreen. And this microphone is actually pretty decent if you do not want to carry an external microphone. But you have the option to as well plug in your external microphone and even monitor the audio because you have a microphone port as well as a headphone port. This camera also comes with Sony's multi-interface shoe that allows you to connect your camera to Sony's digital audio interface and just get rid of connecting cables altogether. You get the same eye autofocus and face tracking on this camera too. There is no IBIS, but you do get what Sony calls active steady shot. This camera comes with a fully articulating screen, which in my opinion is better than that of the other cameras. Another few cool things about this camera is that you have a built-in filter, which can come in very handy. You also get some newer features such as product showcase, background defocus, and face priority auto exposure, which allows your camera to automatically expose for your face depending on your environment. And this is very useful if you're vlogging and if you're going from a bright place to a darker place, and vice versa. You can also connect this camera directly via USB to your computer and use it as a live streaming camera. One tiny drawback though is that this camera uses the older Sony battery, the MPFW50, which is a battery that really did not like because it just runs out of juice really quick. This camera, in my opinion, has been targeted more advanced vloggers, people who film themselves for YouTube or social media, but also want the ability to change different lenses on their cameras. And for the price, you really get a more thorough package when it comes to video qualities and video features. Because it's also a newer camera, you also get a new few features that Sony did not include in the previous cameras. In my opinion, the CVE10 is a really good bargain for the buck. And that way I can save some more money and get myself different kinds of lenses. And if I were to pick between these first 4 cameras, I think I would probably go with the CVE10. So let's move on to the next category. So now I'll be talking about 3 cameras that fall under the $2,000 price range that are still quite good, but they're cameras with non-interchangeable lenses, meaning that they all have a fixed lens and you're not able to detach or swap out that lens. These are going to be more of your grab and go, almost like a point and shoot kind of camera where you just take it and then just shoot as you go without having to fuss around too much with lenses. These cameras are also non-APS-C cameras. They are the 1-inch type sensor. So their sensor size is even smaller than that of an APS-C camera. So the first one is the Sony CV1, which came out in mid-2019, and currently it sits at about $748. This camera has a 20.1 megapixel 1-inch type sensor, and the lens that it comes with is equivalent to a 24 to 70 mm focal range. And that comes with an aperture of f1.8 to 2.8. In terms of video specs, it also shoots 4K at up to 30 frames per second, and in 1080p up to 120 frames per second. And that is an 8-bit 420. This camera though has a unique feature called the HFR, which is high frame rate, which allows you to shoot bursts of super slow motion up to 960 frames per second in 1080p. You also get flat picture profiles for video such as S-Log and HLG. Like the CVE10, you also get a directional 3-capsule microphone with a windscreen. It is also equipped with Sony's multi-interface shoe, and you have the ability to plug in an external mic as well. It does not come with a headphone port though. Just like the CVE10, you also get touchscreen flip out screen, built-in ND filter, a hybrid autofocus, but with less face detection points at 315. You also get active steady shot and real-time eye autofocus and tracking. You also can use this camera to live stream via USB. It also has background defocus, product feature, and face auto exposure. Some of the drawbacks from this camera is that there is no electronic viewfinder. You only get the screen. So this camera is going to be for those of you who do not want to fuss about with carrying different lenses, but want to have a camera that is good for vlogging and can shoot very good photos. This is more like your compact entry-level travel camera that can take raw photos and pretty good 4K video. It's been a very popular camera for beginners since it's come out, just because it has so many features and it has a very good price point. One thing to keep in mind though is that the widest focal length is 24mm. It's not going to be a very wide look when you're vlogging, so this is just something to keep in mind. The next camera is the cheapest in this video, and it's also a downgrade, a step down from the CV1. This is the CV1F. It's also the newest. It came out late 2022 and it currently costs $498. It has a 20.1 megapixel sensor, but the lens in this case is not a zoom range like the CV1. This camera has a fixed 20mm lens with an aperture of f2 to f8. You get 4K at 30 frames per second, up to 120 frames per second in 1080p, in 8-bit 420 color. You get the directional microphone on top of the camera. Like the CV1, you get a microphone port, you get the same flip out touchscreen. Also, the new features that come in the CV line of cameras like background defocus, face priority exposure, product showcase, and you're able to connect this camera to your computer via USB for live streaming and phone calls and video calls. The reason why this camera is the cheapest one of them all is because there are a lot of things that this camera does not have. So there is no hybrid autofocus, so there's no face detection autofocus at all. It's all contrast-based detection, which isn't the best autofocus out there, so that's something to keep in mind. There is no built-in ND filter, there is no headphone jack, there is no flat picture profiles you want to shoot for video like HLG or log, and in my opinion, the worst thing of it all is that you cannot shoot raw photos. And this is the only camera that doesn't allow you to shoot raw photos in this list. In my opinion, you could probably just forget about this camera. Save a little bit more and get yourself a Sony CV1. By paying about $250 more, you get way more features and better video and photo quality. And to be honest, if you were at a lower budget, at about the budget range of the CV1F, I would probably just shoot with my smartphone. You can adapt your smartphone with a gimbal, get yourself an external mic for your phone, and that probably would be a better solution compared to spending $500 for the CV1F. But that's just my personal opinion though, but if you do have that camera or I've seen somebody use it, let me know in the comments below. Let me know what you think. The next camera is a Sony RX100 Mark VII. This is a point and shoot camera and it's a lot smaller than the other cameras. It's really compact in size, but don't let the size of this camera fool you. It has some really good features and hence the heftier price tag. It came out in mid-2019 and currently it sits at almost $1,300, which is quite expensive for a point and shoot camera, but let me run over some of the features. You get a 20.1 megapixel sensor and a lens that goes all the way from 24mm to 200mm with an aperture of 2.8 to 5.4. You're going to get a lot of zoom range out of this camera in a small package. You get the same video frame rates at 4K at 30 frames per second and 120 frames per second in 1080p. You also get flat picture profiles for video, HLG and S-Log. You also get the high frame rate feature, which allows you to shoot a burst of slow motion at 960 frames per second. Compared to the Mark VI version of this camera, now you're able to record unlimited video. In the previous model, you can only go up to 30 minutes of continuous recording. You also get a mic jack on this camera and up to 20 frames per second of blackout-free shooting and photography. You get a tilt-up screen, not an articulating screen unfortunately, but you do get a pop-up electronic viewfinder if you're someone who still likes to use that for photos. You also get Sony's hybrid face detection autofocus with 357 face detect points. And coupled with this, you get real-time tracking and eye autofocus. Now, there is a lot of features in this small package, but there are some drawbacks as well. There isn't a flip out screen, so if you prefer that, there is none of that in this camera. There is no headphone jack. And even though you get a mic port, there isn't a cold shoe or anywhere where you can mount a shotgun mic or an external mic. You're going to have to rig it up and get one of these brackets that Sony sells or other third-party companies that allow you to mount a microphone right next to the camera, which is a little bit of an odd choice, but it's a solution nonetheless. So if you really want a longer zoom range and you do not want the hassle of carrying around different lenses, and you really just want a lot of quality in a small package and not draw too much attention to your little point and shoot, then this might be the one for you. In my opinion, if you are serious about photo or video, in the long run, it's probably better to get a camera that allows you to swap lenses so you can have more versatility in your shooting scenarios and develop yourself either as a photographer or a filmmaker or a videographer. There are two more cameras under $2,000, which I won't go over the full spec list for because I've made another video where I talked about all the features that these two cameras have. So I'll be linking that video below or up here. But these two are full frame cameras under $2,000. So you get the Sony a7C at $1,798 and the Sony a7 III at $1,999. Probably able to get these cameras in the used market because they've been out for a few years now, so that is something to consider. If you want to hear more about what are the differences between these two cameras and which one you should get, check out that video in the description below. So anyways, these are all the Sony cameras that you can consider for 2023 that are under $2,000. Let me know in the comments below which one of these you currently own or which one of these you're planning to get. Thanks again for being here. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time.